Climate Tales are basically three futuristic short stories which are set against the twin emerging threats of climate change and peak oil, which combined together could cause a major impact on civilization and our very existence if their worst effects were ever to be known. Climate change obviously well known about in the public domain. The issue of peak oil perhaps not so well known, but in a nutshell what that's about is not so much oil running out, which is a popular conception, but more about it becoming more and more scarce, or certainly cheap oil, which in itself could cause a major sort of knock-on effect in terms of our economy, in fact beyond that our very survival. Well, the inspiration for Climate Tales basically comes about as a result of my long-term interest in those two subjects. I've been working on a novel called Dragonline for quite a while, which is set against climate change and peak oil, and undertook quite a bit of research in relation to that novel. In particular, I was reading books by the likes of James Lovelock, Gwyn Dyer and other prominent writers on that particular subject, and the three short stories themselves came about because I wanted to look at some possible divergent sort of scenarios based on those two sort of subjects. Certainly the first two stories, though having said that, the third one is set against the same background as Dragonline is. It's basically a spin-off from that novel. But what I didn't want to do was stick with the same sort of scenario, because what might happen, there might be different sort of outcomes as a result of the twin threats of climate change and peak oil. So that was the point of writing Climate Tales, to have a sort of different perspective on those particular subjects. Matilda Levithan basically came about after having done some research for Dragonline, and because of a strange dream that I actually had, I think, as a result of that, which basically was about a female terrorist trying to provoke a regional conflict in the Indian subcontinent, and it seemed like a good basis for a short story. It seemed to fit in well with the concepts of resource depletion and environmental decline as a result of climate change, which could actually provoke conflicts in itself. So basically the story is centred around that. Well, Green Planet is set a little bit further into the future, and that basically is depicting a planet which has been discovered by an alien species, where extreme climate change has actually has kicked in and caused whatever was living there to be wiped out. It's something that was known as a phenomenon by paleontologists, for instance, on this planet. Millions of years ago, for instance, there was a mass extinction at the end of the Permian period, when extreme climate change caused virtually about 90% of species to die out, and that story sort of depicts something along the same sort of lines. Well, the final story, The Hunted, is actually an outtake from my novel Dragonline, and it's a reflection of the scenario for Dragonline in itself, where Britain has become a failed state in the wake of climate change and peak oil resource depletion. And this is something which would have been reflected right across the West, and but obviously with this story it's just keeping it in a purely British context. And it's intended to be sort of like a scene, something that's happening to some characters who have nothing to do with or don't actually appear in the novel itself, but are there at the sort of fringes, while the main sort of thrust of the story, Dragonline itself, is actually progressing. So that's basically what The Hunted is about, and it's there sort of depicting a sort of conflict between two particular factions within that post-apocalyptic Britain, so to speak, something which is reflected in some of the issues which we face today. Well, Dragonline as a novel should be available on Amazon by the end of the year as a downloadable ebook. So hopefully that will be by the end of the year, as I say, or as soon as possible. Maybe after that, if I'm lucky enough, I might be able to get a publishing deal for it, but in the meantime it will be available in that format. If you want to read any excerpts from it, there are some on my blog if you want to check that out, and also on another website called Orphonomy, which is owned by HarperCollins and which you can subscribe to, and if you type in Dragonline by Owen, it should come up quite quickly, and if you read it and support it, that would be very appreciated. Thank you very much.